Hello and welcome to another episode of Know Before You Go. My name is Father Jude McPeak and I'm the promoter of Vocations. This weekend we have the third Sunday in Lent, so we're marching forward in our journey towards Easter. And in our readings this weekend we have a very beautiful responsorial psalm. And it's a psalm you've no doubt heard before, and the response that we are given is a very beautiful response. The response is, "If today you hear his voice, harden not your hearts." This is a very powerful prayer. It's a very powerful statement because a hardened heart is a very bad thing to have in our lives. A hardened heart, in a spiritual sense, is a heart that is cut off from God. It's a heart that is unwilling to change or to grow. And it's a heart that becomes cold and unfeeling. So how do we get hardened hearts? Well, I think through sin, we harden our hearts. When we choose sin, when we choose ourselves over others, when we act on our greed or our selfishness, we harden our hearts and we make it harder for us to change. But also, I think our hearts become hardened because we suffer wounds in life. Indeed, the more we love, the more we are allowing ourselves to be wounded. Because when we love someone, we often experience wounds when we're apart from them, or if they don't return our affection, or if they do something that hurts us. Those all are wounds that we can carry in our hearts. And I think that one temptation is to begin to harden our hearts. We don't want to be wounded, so we begin to close them up a little bit, to become colder, to become more distant. And the more that we do this, the harder our hearts become. And the less we are wounded, but also the less we feel love or experience love or grow in love as well. And so it's important for us to be aware of our hearts and to see in what areas of our hearts are we hardened? In what areas are we unwilling to change? In the gospel, we have a very powerful story. It's the story of the woman at the well. Jesus, by himself, approaches this woman, a Samaritan, and asks her for water from the well. And of course, she's very shocked and almost offended that he's talking to her. And she keeps him at arm's length. And she says, "Why are you, a Jew, talking to me, a Samaritan?" So you already can see the first wound on her heart, that of being a Samaritan, being someone that's shunned and seen as unclean by the Jewish people. And so she's wounded by that. But also we see that she's alone at the well in the middle of a day. Now, in the ancient world, and even in parts of the world today, when you live in a community and there's a well that you have to go to draw water, people universally choose to go in the morning because it's cooler and you're probably going to need water in the beginning of the day as well. But this woman is choosing to go by herself in the middle of the day, which means that either she's not allowed to join the rest of the community, or she chooses not to join the rest of the community. She wants to be isolated and alone from them. And so Jesus finds her in this vulnerable spot, already seeing the wounds that are on her heart, already seeing the hardness of her heart as well. And then finally, when Jesus finally begins to talk to her, he also gets to the heart of the matter. When he asks her, if she would go get her husband, and she says, "No, I do not have a husband." And he says, "You are right. You do not have a husband. You have 5 husbands." That this woman has been divorced 4 separate times. And this divorce is not something that in the ancient world a woman could initiate. Only the husband could initiate divorce. And the most common reason to initiate a divorce was either adultery or the woman was barren. The woman could not have children. And so this woman was divorced 4 separate times for probably the fact that she didn't have children. And so she's carrying this deep wound, this deep hurt, this deep pain that has driven her to a place of isolation, that has isolated her from the community. And Jesus sees these wounds. He sees the brokenness, and he chooses to enter into her world. He chooses to begin to heal those wounds that she is carrying in her. And he does this by by speaking to her, and you can see her begin to open up. You can see her heart begin to become alive again as she begins to see and to thirst and to desire this water that Jesus provides, the desire and to see this promise that Jesus is fulfilling. And so much so that she's so overwhelmed that she goes and she tells the rest of the town about this person, Jesus, that he is the Messiah. She becomes a prophet to the town, a preacher to the town, and she brings others to know Jesus as well, because Jesus showed her his mercy. He showed her the love of God, and he showed her that grace that God had in store for her. And just as the woman found this, so can we. When our hearts become hardened, when we are hurt and feel alone or isolated, Jesus invites us to turn to him and to share our sufferings with him, to share our burdens and our wounds and our pain. And he invites us to drink of the stream of water of his grace, to drink of his word, to drink of his prayer. And in more than that, when Jesus calls us to do this, he also calls us to go out and to bring kindness to a stranger, to visit those who are isolated and alone, to feed those who are hungry, to love others. And in so doing, we not only show the love of God to others, but we receive the love as well. And so as we ponder these mysteries of the love of God, the mercy of God, and as we ponder our own hearts, let us be open to being healed by God. Let us not be afraid to bring these wounds to him, and in the end, trust in his word.